John Denver's "Take Me Home, Country Roads" was one of his best songs that people first heard when it became well-known. Throughout the following 2 decades, the singer, composer, and actor remained one of the most popular and best-selling acoustic performers of the 1970s. Denver was more than just a legendary vocalist. He set an example. However, Denver's private life was so surprising when he wasn't on camera that admirers found it hard to believe they were seeing the same person they adored and loved. Ex-wife confessions and reports of Denver's criminal activities revealed that the negative information about him was more accurate than his supporters initially believed. The man's true nature, which has been revealed after years of speculation, is much stranger than anyone could have imagined. He was born Henry John Deutschendorf on the last day of December 1943. Denver was raised by a family who liked flying in Roswell, New Mexico. This is the fantasy of many boys. His well-known father was Captain Henry Deutschendorf, Sr., of the United States Air Force. In the B-58 Hustler, a bomber, he achieved 3 speed records. The Air Force even inducted the man into its Hall of Fame, and soldiers viewed him as a hero. If you're enjoying this video, don't forget to like, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more amazing content. And hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. Now, back to the topic. What we were talking about was. However, the unpredictability of military life was the drawback of this ideal life for young Denver. The family was constantly on the move. They quickly moved to Arizona, Alabama, and Texas. It was unfortunate that Denver was never able to establish solid friendships in one location. Just as he was settling into his new surroundings, it was time to relocate again. He felt isolated and unfit everywhere as a result of this. This plagued him for the remainder of his life. When Denver was 11 years old, his grandma in Tucson, Arizona, sent him a unique present. The instrument was an antique Gibson. It was created in 1910. As it arrived in Denver, it was over 40 years old. When he was lonely, he composed songs on this guitar to help him feel better. For him, it came to represent steadiness. He soon advanced to join the Tucson, Arizona Boys Chorus as a singer. He gained performing and group singing skills there. Even in high school, he was performing folk tunes at modest performances. There was more to songs than just having fun. It assisted him in determining his position in a constantly shifting reality. There was his father, who was very strict. Denver's father, Dutch, encouraged him to always try his hardest at everything. However, Denver was just a regular guy who enjoyed writing songs. The father and son had a difficult time getting along because of this. But one thing they both loved very much was flying. Denver had finally learned to fly, so they could do something enjoyable together. They were united by it. Perhaps they were reminded of the value of having living loved ones by the activity's peril. Much later in life, Denver would suffer greatly as a result of that same risk. During his flight, Denver had a sense of freedom that permeated his music. After graduating from high school, he enrolled at Texas Tech University to study design. However, he was immediately aware that he had no desire to design structures. He wanted to write songs. After quitting school, he moved to Los Angeles. He decided at that moment to alter his last name. His passion for the mountains and rivers of Colorado inspired the name Denver. The state capital is Denver. It was like starting over. The mid-1960s was a significant break for Denver. Out of over 200 vocalists that auditioned, he was chosen to be the lead singer of the Chad Mitchell Trio. His first genuine opportunity to succeed in the music industry came with this. It allowed him to perform for audiences around the nation. Over the span of around 2 years, he recorded 3 records with the group. He went on stage and gained confidence as a singer. Although traveling was challenging, Denver absorbed everything and gradually discovered his voice. During that time, he wrote many popular songs, such as "Leaving on a Jet Plane," which was recorded by the folk trio Peter, Paul, and Mary in the late 1960s and reached the top of the Billboard charts by the end of that decade. Although he was not yet a well-known solo performer, Denver's song demonstrated that his writing resonated with everyone. Denver didn't turn around once the group disbanded. He was already rising through the ranks on his own. Denver made it appear as though switching from a group to a solo artist was simple. His career took off after the release of his highly successful album Poems, Prayers, and Promises in the early 1970s. The song, Take Me Home, Country Roads, which is beloved by many, nearly didn't make it. When the song was originally released, it didn't sound well and seemed like it might not be popular for some time. Even under his new employer, Jerry Winrob, he persisted. In Denver, Colorado, he attempted to get the song played on radio stations. When it was released in the middle of April, many people enjoyed it. By late August, it had risen to number 2 on the Billboard Hot 50. That same month, it sold over 1 million copies and became a gold record. Over time, the song maintained its popularity and sold more than 1 copy. 5 million digital copies in the United States alone. Because it meant so much to West Virginia, they designated it one of their official state songs. Then, in 1972, Denver released Rocky Mountain High, a new record, in September. It was his 6th album and the first to reach the top 10 in the U.S. Additionally, it peaked at number 4 on the Billboard 200 chart. Among his most well-known songs, Rocky Mountain High was the first single in 1973 and reached the top 10 of the Billboard Hot 100. That year, it peaked at number 29 on the year-end chart and gained popularity among outdoor and environment enthusiasts. The record cover was taken in Aspen, Colorado, at Slaughterhouse Falls. Denver finds the song much more personal as a result. Many years later, Rocky Mountain High was selected as one of the 2 official state songs of Colorado. The best years in Denver's history were 1974 and 1975. It took him just 18 months to have 4 of his songs reach the top of the Billboard Hot 100. Sunshine on My Shoulders peaked at number 1 in the nation in March 1974. Annie's song then appeared in July. Thank God I'm a Country Boy ran at the top of the charts in May 1975. That same year, And I'm Sorry was released in September. These tunes demonstrated his breadth of talent. Some, such as Sunshine on My Shoulders, were gentle and upbeat. Some, such as Thank God I'm a Country Boy, were incredibly upbeat and joyful. He wrote Annie's song for her in 10 minutes, and it's one of his favorite wedding songs. During this period, Denver was broadcast on television, radio, and in millions of homes nationwide. Additionally, he released 3 records during this period, all of which peaked at number 1. The 1973 release of Denver's greatest hits sold more copies than any other album in RCA Records history, including Elvis Presley's. His 1974 album Back Home Again achieved triple platinum status in the United States. Win Dong, which he released in 1975, went on to sell 2 million copies. These 3 records demonstrated Denver's status as a legitimate music star. After all of his effort, he had composed about 200 of the approximately 300 songs that he had created. He received 12 gold albums and 4 platinum albums. He is among the most well-known singer-songwriters of the 1970s as a result. Globally, his tracks have sold over 33 million copies. Denver made a surprising yet successful entrance into Hollywood. He co-starred with comedic classic George Burns in the popular 1977 film Oh God. Despite Denver's lack of theatrical experience, his affable demeanor and candor won him over. The film, directed by Carl Reiner, was based on an Avery Corman novel. In it, a typical grocery store manager was chosen by God to deliver a message. It was simple for people to relate to Denver because of the genuine manner he performed his role. In addition to earning over $51 million in the U.S., the film received an Oscar nomination for Best Script. Although Denver didn't provide any additional roles to the film, his first work showed that he was capable of more than just singing. As an actor, he became one of the few vocalists who could succeed. Some didn't believe he could, but Denver gained international recognition. Denver's manager, Jerry Winrob, found it crucial that he communicate with people abroad. Therefore, despite some queries, Winrob produced a number of television specials for British viewers. He claimed that since the critics wouldn't elevate Denver to a celebrity, they would go directly to the people. The strategy was a huge success. Due to Denver's kindness and his clear voice, many people in Britain and Europe became huge fans. Denver became a global success thanks to these shows, which demonstrated that television could be a fantastic medium for promoting musicians globally. His special, An Evening with John Denver, even took home a Primetime Emmy Award, one of the biggest honors in television. He performed on numerous specials with pals, recounted anecdotes, and sang his own tunes. Because of these performances, his music was heard in homes across the nation and the world. Because of this, every performance felt like it was for him alone, making him one of the most well-liked artists of his era. However, Denver was more than just a singer. Midway through the 1980s, he addressed the U.S. Senate. Parents at the time sought warning labels on music they deemed to be too offensive. Despite being recognized for his gentle tunes, Denver fought for the right to free speech. He once had one of his songs, Rocky Mountain High, removed because it was mistakenly believed to be about drugs. He stood up for the freedom to express one's opinions and spoke the truth. Contrary to popular belief, he did not support warning labels. Since then, the conversation around music and free speech has evolved, and the effects of those developments are still being felt today. In that same year, Denver became the first American performer to play in the Soviet Union during the Cold War in almost a decade. 11 cities, including Tallinn, Moscow, and Leningrad, hosted his concerts. His tour wasn't only about music. The intention was to bridge two cultural divides. Even English-speaking folks were captivated by his music and message of peace. After the trip, he wrote a song titled, Let Us Begin, advocating for peace rather than violence. The recordings from that trip were turned into an album titled Live in the USSR. In the late 1980s, Denver went back to the Soviet Union following the Chernobyl nuclear tragedy. The disaster had serious health implications and forced many people to abandon their houses. He was singing at a performance in Moscow that raised a lot of money for charitable organizations. The records generated additional revenue. That night was unrelated to politics. It was crucial to be kind and kind. People in the crowd believed they were heard and seen. Denver demonstrated the significant impact that a lone guitarist might have. Early in the 90s, he traveled to China with his songs. China had been isolated from the outside world for years, so people there were curious about him. He toured with the government and performed in front of nearly 2 billion people worldwide, and schools were already singing songs like Country Roads. The show's location was supposed to be a well-known location, such as the Temple of Heaven or the Forbidden City. China's youth welcomed him, and the nation's leader had heard about Denver years earlier. His journey elevated him to one of the most prominent Western musicians in China at the time. As Denver grew older, he developed a greater interest in helping others. In the 1990s, he released the best hits album Homegrown. All proceeds from the album's sales were donated to the homeless. It was around this time that he also helped launch the World Hunger Project. He was recognized for his efforts with the Presidential World Without Hunger Award. Using his celebrity to encourage more people to support and care for the environment, he also worked on environmental issues. Denver launched the Planted 2000 initiative, which focused on reforestation and tree planting. The WinStar Foundation was also founded by him. His charitable work was as important to him as his singing. However, he had a very painful domestic life. When he married Annie Martel, it was like a dream. In just 10 minutes, Denver composed Annie's song for her after they took in 2 children together. But as his fame increased, they had issues with one another. In his shadow, Annie would often lose herself, believing nothing was there. Early in the 1980s, they decided to call it quits. Then things became tangled and painful. Denver was generally polite to others in public, but he was really unpleasant when he was by himself. He became irate and untrustworthy, according to news reports. Divorce was an extremely difficult and unpleasant experience. One day, after Annie felled some of his treasured oak trees at their Aspen home, Denver lost it. He broke up their furniture with a chainsaw when he arrived to prevent a conflict. Using a saw, he divided their bed in 2. The event was startling and revealed a damaged marriage. It was difficult to imagine that this was the same person who had known the quiet artist. It was he, however, who filed for divorce. He had been abused, according to the court documents, which damaged his reputation as a good and clean person. Denver had a nasty temper, according to some of his former managers, and Annie's friends supported her. Although Anne remained silent following the divorce, Denver's reputation was already damaged. Many people who once thought highly of him had second thoughts. The first time Denver saw Cassandra Delaney was at a Sydney hotel in the mid-1980s. He fell in love with her immediately while performing in the hotel bar. They fell in love in no time. They were married in the mountains in the late 1980s, in front of their loved ones. Initially, it appeared to be a fairy tale, but immediately everything went awry. Ultimately, Cassandra stated that dating a renowned man was challenging. She wasn't nearly as old as Denver. He had mood swings, and they were well known for him everywhere. They were anxious behind closed doors, but they looked fantastic in public. In the latter part of the 1980s, their daughter Jessie was born. Due to a childhood illness, Denver had long believed he was unable to have children. Jessie's birth seemed like a miracle. Some even speculated that they may have utilized medical assistants to give birth to her. With the birth of Jessie, Denver became more controlling. He appeared more irate and less drawn to Cassandra. Their relationship's weak ties began to deteriorate. Cassandra was requested to conduct an interview with an Australian magazine in the mid-1990s. According to her, Denver had no true pals. The employees were afraid of him. Many of the secretaries sobbed and left. He was regarded by many as being kind. But according to Cassandra, it was all a performance. In solitude, he was frequently cruel and irate. She claimed he tried to control her life, drank excessively, and shouted at her. She remained silent in the hopes that he would change for a long time. They split up in the early 1990s and finalized their divorce a few years later. The legal case was challenging. For a few $1 million, Denver sued Cassandra, claiming she made him appear foolish. Cassandra made a concerted effort to retain Jessie as her child. In his book, Denver discussed this after the event. He claimed that the split was quite painful. That was the last time he was the same. In the mid-1990s, he published his book, Take Me Home. Many fans expressed shock. He wrote of using marijuana, LSD, and cocaine. Additionally, he claimed to have cheated on both of his spouses. Annie Martel's experience served as the inspiration for the song Annie's Song, even during his first marriage to her. He acknowledged that he had occasionally been angry in his writing. There was one story that caught our attention. He used a chainsaw during a fight to cut a bed in half. He no longer had a tidy appearance. He revealed a side to his fans they never would have imagined. One of the most well-known singer-songwriters in the U.S. in the 1970s was Denver. His acoustic sound and gentle singing were well-liked by many, which helped propel him to the top of the charts. 13 of the 25 songs he produced with the assistance of his record label, RCA, went gold, and 8 went platinum. No other RCA record ever sold as many copies as his Greatest Hits album. However, in the mid-1980s, things started to shift. As the usage of drum machines and synths in music increased, Denver's sound became out of place. RCA decided to concentrate on new artists in order to save money after being sold to General Electric in 1986. Denver had a nice and lengthy relationship with them, but they let him go. It startled him. What he believed would be his next record with them was just finished. Known as One World, he was confident that his contract would be extended. Thinking that other musicians would earn them more money, RCA made the decision to move on. Denver claimed that despite the fact that he had earned them a lot of money over the years, they had forgotten about him. He was forced to release his subsequent records independently since he was unable to secure a record deal with any other label. Even well-known musicians might lag behind when their musical tastes and business objectives shift. Learning the lesson was not easy. Nearly the years, Denver logged nearly 20,000 hours of flight. Gliders, single, and multi-engine aircraft, and even aircraft lighter than air were all permitted for him to fly. But he began to struggle with personal issues in the 1990s. Denver was caught driving under the influence of alcohol twice. The Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, took action because pilots must present a valid medical certificate attesting to their safety. His medical clearance was not renewed following his second arrest. Without that certificate, it made no difference that he was a licensed pilot. To regain it, he would have needed to prove that he was no longer drinking excessively. But he never got that procedure done. The thing he loved most in the past was flying, but now he no longer had it. The situation worsened when he followed the FAA's instructions. He was sent signed letters instructing him to turn in his medical certificate, but he either returned them unopened or failed to read them. Thus, a legal gap was created. His failure to respond to the letters made it impossible for the FAA to revoke his license. Though not because he was physically capable, he could nonetheless fly on paper. Only because the system required his cooperation. The breach was completely sealed in March 1997. The FAA might permanently halt him if Denver signed one of their formal letters. Any travel he made after that was illegal. Denver chose not to comply with all the regulations he had been disobeying for years and prove his sobriety in order to regain his flying privileges. Through all of this, he managed to fly. He took a small trial plane he had recently purchased into the air on October 12, 1997. He practiced landing and taking off in the vicinity of Monterey, California. He had only possessed the plane for a day, and he had only flown it for half an hour with a tutor before he did it alone. Flying was challenging because of the numerous changes made to the plane. The fuel control valve was the source of the majority of the issues. It was positioned behind the difficult-to-reach left shoulder of the pilot. Denver had to reach back in an odd manner and twist in his seat to exchange tanks. Without pliers, it was challenging to turn the valve. He also had trouble viewing the fuel readings because they were behind him. He required a handheld mirror to examine them. It wasn't simple to read even then. He spent all of the fuel in the left tank practicing takeoffs and landings while flying close to Monterey Peninsula Airport that morning. The car sputtering and then stopping was heard by many in the vicinity. Upon running out of gas, Denver attempted to switch to the right tank. Using pliers, he had to reach behind him and turn the valve. In the process, he accidentally hit the right rudder pedal. The plane's nose plummeted, and within seconds it was crashing into the Pacific Ocean. Denver was immediately put to death. When the flight started, the National Transportation Safety Board discovered that Denver had only roughly 3 gallons of fuel in one tank and 6 gallons in the other. They said that a major contributing factor to the plane's disaster was his lack of knowledge about it. The dangerous design modifications that made it nearly difficult to exchange fuel tanks mid-trip were also discussed. Denver was a skilled pilot, but he wasn't prepared to pilot this aircraft. The study made apparent that there was a way to prevent the catastrophe. Denver may have avoided the crash if he had flown a plane with a safer fuel system, refueled, or increased his training. His final flight demonstrated how minor errors and disregard for warnings may have disastrous consequences, which was disheartening to witness. It wasn't simply sadness when Denver passed away in the late 1990s. I woke up because of it. The death of a well-known folk musician was mourned by many fans, but the accident also revealed a darker side of his personal life. Denver was so passionate about flying that he occasionally took risks. Even when he wasn't medically cleared to fly, he was known to fly and perform wing tricks without the engine running. These behaviors demonstrated a tendency to push beyond the bounds, occasionally in risky ways. He continued to fly despite repeated warnings and the revocation of his medical certification. The incident also demonstrated a number of poor choices. Flying alone, without a flight plan, in an aircraft with known design defects, and using little fuel. These were not random decisions. They committed many risky acts that ultimately resulted in disaster. Even though no drugs or alcohol were discovered in his body following the incident, his reputation was already damaged by his arrest for driving under the influence in an accident that occurred in the mid-1990s. Despite these shortcomings, Denver has maintained a solid reputation. His songs continue to inspire people all throughout the world with their profound emotions, love for the land, and peace. Even today, folk and country songs like "Take Me Home," Country Roads, Annie's Song, and Rocky Mountain High are still beloved. Prior to its popularity, environmental protection was also a major aspect of his work. One of the first well-known musicians to do this was him. In the end, people remember John Denver not because of his poor choices but because of his profound love of music and the outdoors. Red Rocks Amphitheater's 15-foot bronze statue of him serves as a wonderful reminder to fans of the greatness of the guy who plied those rural roads. For more, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.